Hello, my name is Trevor Johnson. I'm currently a Master's of Social Work student at Kennesaw State University, located in a northern suburb of Atlanta, Georgia. I am here today to discuss a article with you. This article is titled "Adolescence Romance Between Experience and Relationships." It was written by Shmuel Shmulman and Inje Sifri Kranke. It was published in the Journal of Adolescence in 2001. Just some things to go over real quickly. An article from 2001 in current academics terms may be a little bit dated, but for the purposes of this critique, it applies perfectly. Another thing is, as we delve into this article that surrounds adolescence and adolescents' relationships, we'll need to discuss exactly what those terms mean and how they relate to the field of study as social work. A little bit about my own background. I have a bachelor's of social work from the University of Nevada, Reno. I have a minor in addiction treatment services and a minor in psychology. I am just finishing up my first year here at Kennesaw State University, and I'll be going in towards my second year. I also am a graduate research assistant. So I've spent some time trying to publish some papers, writing in an academic forum, and the main goal here today is to synthesize the information that I found in this article in a way that's more presentable to the public, or maybe earlier students, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and the university level. Academic writing at times can be a little bit intimidating. It can seem cumbersome, or the language can seem like it's more difficult than it actually is. So what I'm going to try to do here is break it down into smaller parts that are easier for people to take. I'm by no means an expert in this field. I am working to make myself more familiar with the topic. This is my first video, so feel free to leave comments below. Let me know what I can do better. Since this video is coming out during the current COVID-19 pandemic, I would like to address that. I hope that everyone's doing well. I hope we're practicing safe social distancing and we're doing our best to ensure that the curve stays flattened, that less lives are lost, and that we can move forward through this as a nation. So with that being said, let me move on to the video, to the critique portion of this video. So I think this article does a great job of defining adolescence and going into what adolescent romantic relationships look like. One thing that I'll explain further is adolescence is largely a social construct that was formed in like the late 1800s, especially in Western society. It was a term used to describe that age bracket of people who aren't quite children and aren't quite teenagers, and we haven't figured out their role to contribute to society, as far as like the capitalism economic value. Can they serve for the military? Can they work? What can they do? Well, let's call them adolescents, and we'll continue on from there. What's interesting is that bracket has, the ages have gotten longer and longer. Initially adolescents might have been considered from 14 to 18. Today, adolescents considered from 14 to 24. We know with some of our current neurobiology research that the brain doesn't stop maturing in males up to the age of 26. So that continuum of adolescence or young adulthood continues to grow. One of the big things that the authors in this article do throughout the article is they like to look through things through a developmental perspective. People familiar with the field will not be surprised to hear the terms of like Erik Erikson or Piaget. These are two really well-known developmental theorists who have their stages of life and where a person should be based on their age of development or biological age of development. And throughout the article, the authors really lean on that developmental perspective to define what an adolescence is doing with their romantic relationships and where that romantic relationship is going to take them. For myself, I found that to be really helpful. One of the things that I enjoyed about the article is they broke adolescence into 4 stages for romantic relationships, and those 4 stages are known as the initiation stage, the affiliative stage, and the intimate stage, and the committed stage. And so in the initiation phase, this is the very beginning of adolescence. This is like your 14 to 16-year-olds. The age isn't necessarily as important as the physical, biological age of the person, what the person's going through. But in the initiation phase of an adolescent relationship, it's really a lot about like physical attraction. It's desire. It might not even be interactive. This is like your initial crush, someone that you're starting to like develop feelings for, but you're not really interacting with them on a personal level. Like phone calls. This might be texting in the current times. This could be using social media, sliding into the DMs, getting to know somebody that way. And then the next phase is the affiliated phase. So this is a little bit further in the lifespan, and now we're ramping things up. This is like companionship. So while there is like a sexual needs and there's desire there, friendship still supersedes like the intimacy, and peer groups are more important than necessarily like the one-on-one coupling of 2 individuals. That's the affiliative stage. So our third stage is intimate relationships. And this is where an adolescent, now we're like later in adolescence, you're 17, 18, senior year of high school, you formed like a cohesive dyad. It's 2 people that are partners. The partnership is starting to take on more of a precedence or influence on their life than their friends are, more important than maybe even their family. This is where they're starting to really emphasize how much that other person means to them and model that importance through their actions, through their decision making. And then the final stage is the committed stage, and this is like a full-blown committed relationship. It's just the 2 people together. They have decided that it is their relationship is the most important thing in their life, and they're going to do what they can to ensure that that relationship goes as far as possible. So another way you can look at this in like colloquial or easier to understand terms is that like that initiative stage is kind of like the puppy love or the crush. Same with the affiliative. And then when you get to like the intimate and the committed relationship, like that's your serious relationship. That could be a life partner. That could be marriage. This is someone that you're going to take seriously and you're expecting to spend significant portion of your life with. So the article does a great job of using developmental theory to explain these stages, to explain where the adolescent might be developmentally in these stages of their life. And they mention attachment theory from time to time. They talk about how one's attachment might impact their relationships, although they don't go into like great detail about that. And they also mentioned the impact of families or peers on the relationships and on adolescents' romance. And they say that like at different times of adolescent romance, the peers or the family may have more of an impact or less of an impact, and that also is depending on the peers, and that's also depending on the families. It's also depending on the adolescent that's in the relationship. Where I think the paper kind of misses the mark, and this is sheerly from a social work perspective, one of the beauties of social work is we're really an inclusive field. We don't have any of our own theories, but we borrow theories from everywhere. And so this paper really only focuses on 2 theories. It's got attachment theory a little bit, and it's got a whole bunch of developmental theory. But I think it would be really helpful if they drew on some systems theory and talked about the impact of families and the environment and the social settings and how that played such a large impact on the adolescent relationship and romantic experience. I feel that just mentioning that the family could have impact, it's worthwhile, but I think there's a lot more there. And even at the end of the article, they talk about, suggestions for further research or what they could do better, but they don't mention that impact of the system, of what else, everything else that's happening in that adolescent's life. Like, as social workers, that's a big thing. We like to see the person in the environment. We like to see the person's in the middle, and everything else is impacting them from all other sides. And I feel that it is really lacking to not address that thoroughly, or to say that they intentionally didn't address that and here are the reasons why they didn't address that. I would have found that to be more helpful than to just kind of ignore it completely. That would be my biggest complaint or constructive criticism of the article. I think the article is really well written for an academic article. It's easy to follow. They make their points thoroughly. Their points are backed up. They have a lot of well-researched, well-defined references. You can tell that they're not just saying things out of the blue, and I appreciated learning about adolescence romance through the authors of this article. There's going to be further postings on my page, so I hope that you appreciated this one, and we're going to keep going. Once again, my name is Trevor Johnson, and thank you for lending your time to me.